There are two ways that you can layer on the gel plate, and there are also two ways that you can register your paper on the gel plate. Don't know what that is? We're going to cover it. Welcome back, friends. So today we're going to work with this handy little tool, and we're going to talk about registration. Now, a lot of people who are not graphic designers, not photographers, they don't know what that is. So all registration means is that each layer is lined up with the layer previous. So if you're doing single layers and building your layers, as many people do, this tool comes in handy if you really want them to be lined up perfectly. I don't usually concern myself with that because my papers are for collage and they're going to get torn up, cut up, and nobody cares about that rough edge. But some people really like to do a composition. They want to really plan their prints, and that's when this comes in handy. But I'm also going to do the poor man's registration, where we're just going to use tape. So those are the two ways that we can register. And we're also going to discuss the two ways that you can layer. So yes, one layer at a time, that's one way. And the other way is to layer upon layer, letting each layer dry right on the plate. And then a final wet layer, put the paper down and single pull. So we're going to cover that as well. Hopefully it's not going to be too long a video. Let's get to it. Okay, so I'm going to be using my small 6x6 plate today, and the reason for that is, well, you'll see later. Anyway, I'm going to use two of my stencils. These are new stencils that I just created, and I'm going to use some texture plates. This one and one that I cut with cardboard. So I'm going to use a registration tool. We're going to do this two ways, like I said. We're going to use a registration tool. So I've cut these papers to 8x8. And the reason for that is the registration tool is an inch thick. So when we line up our paper in the upper left-hand corner, there will be an inch all the way around with the 8x8 paper. It should work out perfectly. So I cut like 3 of them to size, and this is a slightly heavier paper. It's I think a mixed media paper that we're going to use today. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to leave it a little bit more than 2 minutes to make sure I get good paint transfer. So I'm starting with some Indian yellow, and I'm going to make a background. So each time I lay the paper down and I line it up in that corner, it should be registered, which means that each layer will line up with the one previous. So like I said, I'm not really sure because I don't usually use this kind of paper. I'm thinking maybe I need to leave it just a little bit longer. And so I'm going to just like speed through this because we're not going to sit here and wait 2 minutes, right? Anyway, it's a little bit more than 2 minutes is what I did. I think about 2.5 to 3 minutes. Really wanted to make sure I had good contact. And the one thing that is frustrating about this registration technique is the waiting, waiting for anything to dry. On all of these, it's waiting for dry is the most frustrating. But anyway, here we go, and it's not great. I didn't get 100% contact, but we're going to keep moving on. So this is teal from Golden. I love this color. I'm adding a touch of white. The little bottles, if you're wondering, are Nova Color paints. But I still like my golden. Okay, so first I'm going to pick up with some deli paper, and because I'm going for the ghost. And this is what my normal process is. I pick up with some deli. Now I'm going to line up my same paper again, and I'm going to pick up the ghost. And notice I did not wait for that paint to dry. You cannot wait for the paint to dry. If you wait for it to dry, it'll be too late. So in this particular technique where you're layering, layer upon layer, you have to do it when paint's still wet. So if your paint dries fast, like fluid usually does dry pretty quickly, you need to not wait around. Now we have to wait for it to dry because we want to get a good pickup. So I'm probably waiting again around 2 minutes. And I'm tearing because I'm thinking my next layer, I want to do something a little bit different, and I want to use this almost like a mask. So that's pretty good. I love when two colors don't completely mix together. That's when I think it's most interesting. I could have blended those two, the blue and the teal and the white perfectly, but then it wouldn't have been as interesting. So this is my cardboard that I cut. This is Payne's Gray. So I'm going to use that piece that I cut. Again, that's deli paper, so it's going to pick all of that paint up on that side, on the right-hand side. And then I'm going to overlay that on our paper where we had the two other layers, the yellow and the teal. And again, I have to wait about 2 minutes to make sure that I get a good pickup. So because the paper's thicker, I am continuing to rub on it and kind of press down a little bit, just because of the thickness of the paper. Normally I don't have to do that with thin papers. So we didn't get it 100%, but I think it looks pretty good. It needs something else though, I think. So I'm just but notice how each layer perfectly registered with the last one. That's the genius of that tool. So I'm thinking it needs a pop of color or something. I just know it needs something. At this point, I'm trying something different. So again, I have to get the ghost, I have to pick up with deli paper. I'm kind of just, picking up a little bit of that edge. And now I'm overlaying that on the other side. So you see, as you're building your composition, you don't have to, the whole plate doesn't have to come into play. You can just, plan a section of your plate to have a design that you're now going to overlay on this. So after about 2 minutes, so I like it, but I'm still thinking something needs to be done on that right-hand side. So this is that Payne's Gray, which is darker, so we're going for a dark ghost. wanted a nice clean design on that side. And I also love this paper. It's like a bonus paper. So instead of deli paper, if you don't have deli paper, you can use any kind of thin paper to kind of pick up in between, leave you with a ghost. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. I kind of like that. So it carries over from the Payne's Gray on the left-hand side. Now some of my grunge, the crispy edges are coming off on my, during my registration. Okay, so on this next one, we're going to do something slightly different. We're going to start with a stencil and go for the ghost again with the deli paper. But it's going to be a little simpler than the last one. And this time we're going to layer with dry layers. Then we have a great deli paper, so I'm going to save that. But we're going to wait for this to completely dry. And then once this layer dries, we're going to put a second layer over this, and we're going to use our texture tools. Okay, so this paint does dry fast. Like I said, I'm using Nova Color paint. I do have a retarder or like a glazing liquid added to it to slow down a little bit of the drying time because it dries so fast. But I've kind of now got it to about the same time as the golden fluid. And so I'm just making some kind of scratching into it or lifting with some texture plates. And now I'm going to let that dry. And it's dry already. So we are going to pick this up with white. And we're not going to bother to use the registration tool because this is multiple layers with a single pull. And we really don't need to worry about registration. We can always cut the paper to have even borders around the edges. And I'm using a rice paper here. And we have to definitely wait for the paint to completely dry. I'm saving that brayer sheet because sometimes the brayer sheet is so beautiful and they make good subtle when you need neutral papers. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over and try to peel it up so I don't lose any of the paint. And it all came up. It looks fantastic. And this is the rice paper that I was using on that last one. So I'm just going to pull out a couple of sheets. And this time around, we're going to do the poor man's registration. I'm going to tape it at the top, and then we're going to have another sheet that's kind of taped at the bottom. And we're going to tag team. So we're going to use the ghost on one, and we're going to use, so we're going to do positive and negative. Hopefully that will make sense. Unfortunately, when I flip the paper up, you're not going to see it. When I flip it down, you're not going to see it. But I think you'll see it at the end, and it'll give you an idea. So we're creating backgrounds first. And with the rice paper, it doesn't take quite as long. And I don't care if the background's a little bit grungy, that's fine. So hopefully this technique will show you how different the results are going to be just from using the positive or the negative. In other words, the first print or the ghost. It's just the same stencil is going to give you very different results. And you'll see that I really don't wait that long in between. The rice paper, it does pick it up a lot quicker. And again, I am not waiting for the paint to dry. It must be wet. So this is manganese blue. And of course it was Indian yellow still on the plate, so now we're getting a green. So since that one had the ghost, this time I'm going the other way around. And then we're putting the ghost on the one on the top. And now we're going for our dark color, which is probably going to be the last layer. I usually like to work, when I'm doing this kind of layering, from light to dark, especially since a lot of the paints that I use are transparent. So you're seeing through to those other layers. So anyway, I was unhappy with this, and I didn't want to put it over either one of those layers, so I'm picking it up with some deli paper. I think it's going to make a great deli paper, but it was not going to make a good layer. You could see there was just way too much paint. So sometimes you have to shift gears in the middle of a session. I'm trying to get that dark paint. It still didn't completely come off, so it's mixing in with the white, but that's fine. It's going to be a pretty color. And I decided to do rubber bands instead of that stencil. So this page does have the ovals on it, it's just the other page did not. The one that's coming down from the top. So it is going to be very, very different. So this one has a lot of depth because of that dark color that is then followed up with a light color. But look at how different these look. And sometimes, you know, I swapped. If I used the ghost print on one, then the next time around I use something else. Those three papers, including that deli paper, are going to be really interesting in a single collage where I can use all three of them. They're so different and they will complement each other well. So this was that first one that I did with the registration tool. And now I'm thinking it still needs a pop of color. So I pull out my orange. This is a Pyrrole orange, and I'm going to go for the ghost. So I'm laying down this stencil. I want a clean background, so I'm making sure that I'm getting just a clean ghost. Putting my registration tool back in. So sometimes when you look at your composition later, you just think, you know, something's still missing. So you can always add to it. And now I love it. Now I really love it. So much better. Okay, so this was, how did we do this? Okay, one layer at a time. One layer at a time using this nifty tool This nifty tool that just fits in the corner of your plate and gets your paper in exactly the same place every time. So you may have watched The Art Whisperer. He does this a lot. I don't, because I'm not working with thick paper usually. This was a much, here, let me show you what paper this was. This is probably not a paper recommended for this printing, but this is what I had on hand. So I sometimes use these for collage. So it is 180 GSM. They're 9 by 12 sheets, and I don't even remember where I got this from. I'm not even, it's an old pad that I had. So anyway, I cut this down to 8 by 8 because this is 1 inch. My plate is 6 inches, so I needed to add 2 inches, so I would have an inch all the way around. And I was happy with it, but I knew it still needed something. So I love how I put this here, just a piece of that stencil, the ghost of it, just to balance some of the dark with a little bit more over here, but different. And I kind of looked at it for a while and moved on and did the other prints, and then realized I need some pop here. And so this is not, see, it's semi-transparent. I would have rather it been more opaque, but actually I'm not unhappy with this. That you could see the other, you know, shapes and you know, that blooming that happened with this. By the way, this is manganese blue. It blooms all the time. If you're not happy with the lacing, blooming, whatever you want to call it, don't buy this color. But I know this is very transparent and it's going to bloom a lot. It's very fluid. I don't know why it does this, but you could mix it with a touch of white, and maybe it'll probably be more stable. But anyway, the orange is just what it needed against the blue. We all know that blue and orange look fabulous together. And then I have this very warm Indian yellow in the background. And we even have a little teal in there. So yeah, very happy with the way this came out in the end. Not one for doing compositions on gel printing. My gel prints, if you haven't been here before, my gel printing is strictly, let's make collage paper. So the composition of the final print is really not all that important because I'm going to be cutting it up and gluing it into collage. All right, so this was the 1 layer at a time using the registration tool. Now this one was, we have a total of 3 layers. We have the first layer, which was the Payne's Gray. I wanted something dark. I started with dark this time. On this one, I started with light, and I'm building on top of that. So each layer is going on top of the other one. Normally, I wouldn't put a lighter color on top of a dark color. In this case, it worked out fine. But usually I pick my darkest color last. But this was actually quite nice. And sometimes I do white also because then you really have some depth. On this one, if you're going to have a dark and you want it to be on top, then you better put that first because we're building our layers from the top to the bottom when we're doing multiple layers with a single pull. So I started with the Payne's Gray. I did the quinacridone red and the Indian yellow, tried to blend them a little, blended them a little too much, so we got a little bit of muddy colors. But, you know, I'm not unhappy about muddy colors because sometimes I need those papers. And if I always have just bright papers, that's not so great. But anyway, what I really wanted was for this Payne's Gray to go a little green on this side, and a little more purple on this side. We got a little bit of that going on, but not a whole lot. But that was the plan anyway. And then our final layer I picked up with white. I could have picked up with another shade of yellow that's more lemony. Yeah, I could have picked up with another light color, but it needs to be a light color. You have to remember these are all transparent, and each layer that you put down is going to affect the previous layer. And then we did a single pull with that white. And this is a very challenging way of making layers, but it's my favorite way, I have to say. Okay, so then we did the poor man's registration. And we got two very, very different prints, didn't we? Like, we all have a roll of tape, so no excuses, right? You can give this a try. So it works the same way as this, where we're doing one layer at a time. I started with a light blue on both of them. These, except for the Payne's Gray, I didn't use it on this one because I thought that that ghost was going to overwhelm this. Now, I didn't throw it away, and I was right, it would have overwhelmed it. A fabulous transparency paper. So for me, this is the bonus paper of the day. They look like cells. It's amazing. And this is going to look fabulous glued down on top of something where we see the other colors coming through. I can't wait to use this. But that is why this one has more depth. So sometimes when you really want to get depth, put your dark color in between. So I have three different shades of layers in between. Now in this one, most of it got covered up by this white at the top. But how beautiful and ethereal is this? These are very different type prints, and yet they were made from the same stencils and same, except for the blue layer, the rubber bands at the end. I think I lean towards this one more because I'm a contrasty person. I always love things that have some contrast and depth to them. So I really love this because we have super lights, we have medium shades in here, we have a slightly darker green, we have this rich Payne's Gray. So it really has depth. So this one is my favorite, but I have to say this would make a nice background start to a collage. This is more of maybe a background paper. This one does not stand out on its own. Now, in both of these, I did not try to do a composition the way I did with this one, but I could have. So this, and you didn't have to do two papers like this. Sometimes I do the registration, and if I'm trying to get a ghost, I just use the deli paper, and I have more bonus papers. And I just come out with one print in the end. But I think this is a great way to really maximize your paint. Let's face it, paint is not cheap. So let's try to get more for our buck, let's get two papers instead of just one, and two very different looks. All right, so I hope that explains what registration is. I hope you experiment with it a little bit. Obviously, we didn't do any registration on this. It was not necessary. It's good to know this technique as well because you get different results. You really do. But for registration, I hope this video answered all your questions, and I hope you give it a try. Hey, before I sign off, I just want to let you know about the new membership here on YouTube. I just set it up last week. With that, you will be able to participate in polls where you help me decide what to create next. And we're also going to have some custom emojis and some badges that alert me that you are a member and I could answer your comments quicker. So join me. It's only $2.99 a month. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I absolutely loved those last prints that I did. Oh my goodness. I was so excited about it that when I was cleaning up today, I took those 3 pieces of paper. That was the 2 prints and the Gelli paper that also has me, they look so good together, that I put them somewhere safe so that I can use them pretty soon. Probably in a quick collage or something like that. But anyway, I was really excited about that last one. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this video. This is stuff that beginners don't necessarily understand about the layering, and I've done videos about that before, very popular videos where I really fully explain the layers, especially the single pole video. Oh my goodness, everybody loves that video. They said I finally understand it. It's a little tricky, but what's on the bottom is on the top, kind of. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to create, inspire, and share, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.